Congressman Adam Kinzinger joins me now. He sits on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. It's nice to have you here. What does it signal to you that your colleagues in the House are calling the President's son, Jr., back in to answer more questions?
I don't know what it signals. I don't talk to people on the Intel Committee about this because there's a reason it's behind closed doors. There's a reason it's protected. All I've said from the very beginning is we need answers to what happened. You know, when it comes to justice in this country, nobody should be immune from it. Nobody should be protected from justice. We need fair justice and answers. And ultimately, whether it's this or whether it's any of these issues, people need to know the answers. And I think Robert Mueller's getting to it. I think the House Committee and the Senate Committee are going to get to it. We just have to have patience that they're going to do what they need to do.
Do you have any concerns, speaking of Bob Mueller, who is leading this Russia investigation? The president has been highly critical of some of the members of his team, legitimately so, for some of their what have now been revealed political persuasions. But my question is, do you have any concern that the White House will move to get rid of Bob Mueller?
No, and I don't have concerns that Bob Mueller's not going to come out with a fair assessment either. It's both ways. Look, everybody has a political bias. No matter who you are, you have a political bias. When it comes to whether you're serving in the military, whether you're in the FBI, you need to keep that political bias under wraps, especially if you're dealing with a political issue. So it is absolutely inappropriate for somebody to show pro-Hillary or anti-Trump tendencies publicly and then to be on that probe. I mean, put them on something else. And so I do have concerns with, but look, Bob Mueller moved to fire this person, and I think he's committed to a fair and just outcome.
Let me ask you about the decision and the announcement coming from the president in just a few hours that the U.S. will recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, eventually move the embassy, the U.S. embassy, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, making it the only country's embassy in Jerusalem. The response from Palestinians has been this memo that's been widely circulated of 3 days of rage. We're seeing images already of American flags being burned in Gaza City. Right. You support this move from the administration. Tell me what you think it does to benefit Americans.
We can't sit back and say, oh my goodness, somebody's going to burn an American flag or somebody's going to have a day of rage because they disagree with this movement. We are Israel's closest ally, and Israel is our closest ally in the Middle East. And that's just a fact.
But we have been, without declaring this before. We have been without the embassy moving before.
That's right. And this has been the law since 1995. It's been waived by every president since. I think it's time to get it done. I think we have to be cautious about it, and I think there's going to be a long process to do this. But at the same time, let's just get it. Basically recognizing that we can put an embassy in Jerusalem is basically saying we recognize Israel's right to exist, which up to now the Palestinians really haven't. And so if we're going to have a peace process, I think so, yeah. I think.
Why?
But I think even beyond, because we have a stronger partnership with a country in the Middle East. Now, it's not like Israel's going to come here and defend us against an invasion, but having a strong ally where we've shown no daylight between us and Israel, and I think this is part of it, is actually very beneficial to Middle East, whether it's Middle East peace or whether it's peace in broader areas beyond just Israel and Palestinian areas.
All right, others would argue our relationship with Israel has been and is under President Trump very, very strong. Netanyahu has been a huge supporter of President Trump. But I want to move on to some other issues, and that is Roy Moore, the Alabama Senate race in less than a week. You have said very clearly that you think he should step aside. He should not hold that seat. You have now Jeff Flake, Republican senator, giving money to his Democratic opponent, Doug Jones. You've got more and more Republicans divided over this in your own party. You've got Romney saying a Moore win could hurt the party overall, could stain the GOP. Are you worried about what this division does to your party in the midterms?
Yeah, and you'd be crazy not to be. Look, I became a Republican when I was young because I believe in our vision for limited government. I believe in strong national defense. And I believe that we try to hold our elected officials to the highest values, really, to the highest standard. And I think that's a good thing, right? If you want faith in your federal government, you need to believe that the federal government's out there working for you. This Roy Moore thing, to me, is very disappointing for my party. I can't tell Alabama what to do. I don't live in Alabama. I'm from Illinois. But, as a Republican, I look at that and say, I think these women's accusations are very credible. I've seen them talk about them, and it's very disappointing for me to see the party getting behind. Look, 52 Senate seats or 51 Senate seats, I mean, really, it's not going to have an appreciable difference. But to be a party that accepts some of the behavior of Roy Moore, I don't want to be that party. And so, look, I'm going to continue to take a stand on it. And if somebody wants to criticize me for that, that's fine. But at the end of my job in Congress, I want to be able to look in the mirror and say I did everything I could with this moment I had. And this is part of that.
On taxes, you voted in favor of the House Republican tax plan. Right after that passed, Quinnipiac poll shows only 29% of Americans support it. Only 29% of Americans supported. 64%, Congressman, thinks it helps the wealthy more than it helps the middle class and poor folks. You worried about that?
You're always worried about that, about the perception of it. But look, we are arguing against, we are in a battle, to an extent, a political battle, against, the same talking points we've heard for a long time. The 1%, the wealthiest, the richest, whatever. I think when people actually see their tax liability come down, in my district in Illinois, 70% of people file the standard deduction. That's doubled, as well as doubling the child tax credit. We'll see what ends up in the final package. They're going to see more money in their pockets. And beyond that, to make our corporations, our businesses, who a lot of times people like to talk down, but they're the driver, the engine, the small business of putting people to work and driving up middle-class wages, they're going to be competitive.
Here's the problem, Congressman. It's not just about talking points about the top 1%. I mean, this analysis from the Nonpartisan Tax Policy Center on the Senate bill, which I will say does have some differences from the House bill, but they analyze the Senate bill, and they say 7% of taxpayers will see higher taxes right away, 2019. Half will pay more in 2027, and the top 0.1% gets a $182,000 tax cut by 2027. Those are the numbers. Those aren't talking points. Are you comfortable with all that? Could you vote for a version that does that?
Well, look, when you talk about the 2027 number, this is what I dislike about the Senate rules. They have this gimmicky thing where they have to have them expire in 2027. I don't understand that. I don't know if that's going to end up in the final version. I'm not sure. But that's where those numbers come from. Say everybody's taxes are going to go up in 2027. It's because they have to have that sunset at that time. I don't like the rules. I don't like those games. Trust me, I don't.
But it doesn't change
But the reality is people are going to get to keep more of their money. And when I look at this and say, I want to bring the tax code into the 21st century, not from 1986 at a time when nobody even had a computer in their house, to now being competitive internationally again, that is, America can do big things. And I'll tell you, other countries look at this, and if we make our corporate tax code competitive again and our individual tax code competitive, they're going to be like, well, look, we have to, America's back, basically. And I don't think you're going to see any more jobs leave this country because we have a lower corporate tax rate.
Congressman, thank you for joining us.